The Bernoulli Family by Joanna Yarbrough, M570, The History of Mathematics, under the direction of Dr. Amy Barrett. The Bernoulli family was a mathematical dynasty that began with Nicholas Sr. In the 1500s, families were being killed and punished because of their religious beliefs. The Bernoulli family was a Protestant family that fled from Antwerp in 1583 to escape the massacre by the Catholics because they were Huguenots. They originally settled in Frankfurt. Jacob's grandson Nicholas moved to Basel, where he became a wealthy and successful merchant that had quite the temper that he often used against his boys. Nicholas Sr. had three sons, Jacob I, Nicholas I, and Johann I. Jacob, also known as James, was the oldest Bernoulli brother. His dad wanted him to study theology, but instead he decided to study astronomy, math, and physics. He was very successful in mathematics and was tutoring by the age of 22, including his younger brother Johann. Jacob is known for his personal motto, "Against my father's will, I study the stars," because Jacob was quite proud that he was doing something his father did not want him to do. And although Jacob was an excellent mathematician, he was also successful and skillful in other areas, including poetry, which frequently showed throughout his scientific work. For such a short life, Jacob had a great deal of accomplishments. In 1695, he studied partial differential equations and created Bernoulli's equation as seen here. He is also honored with the title of the inventor of polar coordinates, and he was the first to use integral to describe the area under a curve. In 1713, several years after his death, Jacob had published The Arts of Conjecture, a book dealing primarily with permutations, combinations, Bernoulli trials, Bernoulli distribution, and the Bernoulli numbers. This was the first major publication concerning probability. In this publication, it also had the law of large numbers, which says if you repeat an experiment enough times, the actual probabilities you find in the experiment will closely resemble the theoretical probabilities. This publication also included Bernoulli's theorem, which is used to calculate the probability of an event happening r times out of n attempts. Johann was Jacob's younger brother. His father also wanted him to become a merchant, but instead, similar to his brother, Johann decided to study math and chemistry. Johann was a professor most of his life, including at Basel University after his brother's death. One of the most notable things about Johann was his personality. He was regarded as a mean person who was unkind to everyone around him, including his family. Johann also had many accomplishments. Johann has been remembered as the main teacher of Euler and also as the tutor of L'Hopital. Unfortunately for Johann, he taught L'Hopital everything he could, including everything on differential calculus. L'Hopital then went on to publish what Johann had taught him, and a particular rule involving the limits of indeterminate forms has now become known as L'Hopital's rule instead of Bernoulli's rule. Johann is also known as being a superb communicator and wrote over 2,500 letters in scientific discussion with over 110 scholars at the time. This was far more communication with other mathematicians and scientists than the other mathematicians in those days. He also outlived his fellow mathematicians and was quite proud of it, and even once said that heaven had avenged him since his competition had died before him. The last accomplishment of Johann is that he and his wife produced another generation of great mathematicians, including Daniel Bernoulli. We can't investigate the Bernoulli family without acknowledging the relationship between Jacob and Johann. Being brothers, the brothers worked well together and studied together during much of their lives. However, being brothers can also create a large amount of competitiveness, which was likely amplified by the abusive treatment from their father. Jacob was the older brother who initially taught Johann, and therefore Jacob was never able to see Johann as an equal. When Johann became his own mathematician, Jacob was unwilling to accept his brother's ability, and Johann was always striving to prove to his brother that he was equal. The brothers also freely built off of each other's work. One brother would prove something but have a mistake, and the other brother would fix the mistake and claim the whole proof as his own. The brothers publicly challenged each other in publications and publicly scorned each other when mistakes were found. Jacob and Johann had a middle brother named Nicholas I. Nicholas I did not become a mathematician, but instead became a senator in Basel. However, Nicholas I had a son, Nicholas II, who became the chair of mathematics at Padua, which is actually the same position that Galileo had once filled. Nicholas then became the professor at Basel University, where he studied probability, differential equations, and geometry. Nicholas is most famous for editing his uncle Jacob's The Art of Conjecture. As mentioned earlier, one of Johann's great accomplishments was fathering a new generation of Bernoulli mathematicians, including Nicholas III, Daniel, and Johann II. Nicholas III was brilliant from a young age. For example, he was fluent in German, Dutch, Latin, and French by the age of 8, and completed his Doctor of Philosophy degree by the age of 16. Nicholas became the professor of mathematics at the Academy of St. Petersburg, where he proposed the paradox of St. Petersburg. The paradox of St. Petersburg is a probability question where a person bets money on how many times a coin will be flipped before coming up ahead. Unfortunately, Nicholas died at the age of 31. He was loved by his country and his potential was seen. When he died, the Empress Catherine ordered that the funeral of Nicholas be paid for at public expense. Daniel was the brother of Nicholas and the son of Johann. Daniel, like his father, decided to ignore his father's desire and instead received his doctorate in medicine. Daniel was perhaps the most talented Bernoulli and is known for flowing effortlessly between the fields of science, including physics, chemistry, math, medicine, and so on. Daniel was also particularly talented in modeling real-life situations with math. Finally, he is also known for studying several years with Euler. Since Daniel studied in so many fields of mathematics, his accomplishments are spread widely throughout the scientific fields. He was the first to use the Fourier trigonometric series. He studied music's relationship to math. He applied statistics to real-life situations, including predicting mortality rates. But he is perhaps best known for his published book, Hydrodynamics, where he first introduced Bernoulli's principle, a principle that says fluid's pressure diminishes as its velocity increases. Unfortunately, Johann was extremely jealous of his son Daniel. When Daniel published Hydrodynamics, Johann published an extremely similar book called Hydraulica and predated the book to 1732, several years before Daniel's publication date. Fortunately, the public realized that Johann had plagiarized most of what Daniel had written, and Daniel is still given the credit today. Johann was also upset because he and Daniel were co-winners of the French Academy of Science Prize, which was even worse for Johann because Daniel was a supporter of Isaac Newton, which Johann did not approve of. So when it was all said and done, Johann actually banned Daniel from the family home because of his jealousy. Johann II was the third son of Johann I. He also studied mathematics and became a professor of mathematics at Basel after his father. Johann's primary work, however, was in physics, where he won 3 prizes from the Academy of Science in Paris. Unlike any other mathematical family in history, the Bernoullis had a third generation of mathematicians, Johann III and Jacob II. The intelligence in the Bernoulli family was obvious. Johann III earned his Doctor of Philosophy at age 13, and then became the Royal Astronomer of Berlin at the age of 19. His largest mathematical contribution was that he published the French translation of Euler's Elements of Algebra. Jacob II was Johann's brother. He actually completed a literary study before earning his law degree. An interesting fact about Jacob was that he was married to the granddaughter of Euler. But unfortunately, Jacob's mathematical abilities were never allowed to develop fully because he died from drowning in 1789. The Bernoulli dynasty. Dynasty is the only appropriate word to describe the Bernoulli family and the power and influence that they had in the world of mathematics. The Bernoullis have influenced almost every area of mathematics, including differential, integral, and exponential calculus, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, ordinary and partial differential equations, number theory, calculus of variations, probability, and mechanics, and this is not mentioning the other areas of science that they have influenced. I recommend further research into the Bernoulli history and the drama. Students may relate well to the family drama, the competing siblings, the angry parents, and your students may connect to the Bernoulli family. Connecting to the Bernoulli family and the history of mathematics may make the learning of math easier and more enjoyable for your students. Thank you.